now. So anything will be live streamed. Okay. It's like we're getting some people starting to join us now. Thank you very much. So just to let everybody know, you can watch this stream in 3 ways at the moment. So you're either with us in our Zoom meeting. Thank you very much for joining us. Or you can watch this for free via the YouTube link or via the ATCE app as well. And I can see there's a few people joining on all 3 platforms. If you have any questions for our guests today, please do submit that in any of the chat rooms that you're watching this on. We're monitoring all 3 rooms, so we'll make sure to include those in any questions being asked on the day. If you aren't lucky enough to be joining us and you're watching us on demand later on, unfortunately, you've missed out on the live Q&A. But if you have any general questions, please do send them to yp@sp.org, and we will send them on to you. Okay, so we've got a few more people joining us. Great to see you all. Please do make sure to use the chat, and it'd be great to see where you're joining us from. Let's see, we have some young. Thank you for joining us. Hi, Cassandra. Hi, Mohammed.
Hey, James.
Hey, Cassandra. As I can see we've got a few people joining us in the other feeds as well. Just give it one more minute and then we'll get started for today. So once again, for those who have just joined us, if you're watching us via the ATCE app, the YouTube live feed or Zoom, we are monitoring the chat boxes in all three platforms. So just let us know if there's any questions and we'll be happy to make sure our speakers can hear them today. But I want to make sure we use up the most of the time. So we will get started. So hello, everybody. My name is James Whitaker. I am the SP Young Member Manager, and I am helping host this session for today on behalf of the Young Member Engagement Committee. This session is taking part as the ATCE 2021, which is actually taking place physically in Dubai. But with travel still being tricky for many people, especially our students and young professionals, we wanted to make sure many of our programs were as accessible as possible. So we hope you enjoy this free session today. As you may see from the initial slide, unfortunately, our moderator for today's session has been unable to join us due to some flight delays. So no Mohammed Al-Balushi today, unfortunately. However, we're very happy to be joined by the incoming chair for the Young Member Engagement Committee, Nihal Manir. She is joining us. She's actually in Dubai at the moment. How is it over in Dubai, Nihal?
Yeah, it's really nice here, and the ATCE, spirit is in there. Like you can see the SPE people around you, and you can see like many familiar eyes, I would say, not faces because of the masks. So it's really good here.
Yeah, it must be a very different experience since I was last there in Dubai, which feels like a long time ago. I can't wait to join ATCE again in person. Hopefully we'll all get to very soon. So before we get started for today's session, I just wanted to describe a bit. Again, we have a few more people joining us since the initial few minutes. You can actually watch this via 3 different platforms at the moment. Thank you to those who have joined us in our Zoom feed. For those of you, you'll be able to take part in some of the more interactive features later on in this session. We are hoping to keep this as interactive as possible. So please feel free to use the chat boxes and things like that if you have any questions. Later on, we'll be doing some breakout sessions, so it would be great to get some of you on camera as well. It would be really nice to see some of you. But if you don't want to turn your camera on, don't worry too much. We won't stop you from taking part in anything, but it would be really, really nice to see. I know from the registrations, we have a lot of people from all over the world, so it would be a really great part of the meet and greet to see you all. So today's session, just a little. See, we always host a meet and greet as an opportunity for students to catch up with each other and meet up with each other before the kind of the opening plenary sessions and things like that at ATCE. SP is all about community and network, and this is an event that's specifically designed to kind of help that as well. So hopefully some of the people you meet on the session today will become lifelong friends. You never know. So the purpose of this session, we know that the industry is going through a lot of changes at the moment. SP is going through a lot of changes. Everything's going through a lot of changes at the moment, which for students and young professionals makes career paths very difficult and tricky to kind of navigate. And what we want to do here today is even in times where you know, it's difficult as a recent graduate to get a job and things like that. Many people are having to diversify and maybe look at other career paths and things like that. But we're all in this together. We're all trying to help each other through. So we wanted to show a fantastic case study today, I suppose, in our fantastic CEO, Mark Rubin, who's here with us today. I'll let the session go into more detail about Mark's background and how he became the CEO of SPE. But yeah, I think you'll find it really exciting, really inspiring stuff. Our moderator today, Nahal, will be interviewing Mark and going through a series of questions, and then we will be opening that up for questions from you, the audience. And then once we have completed that part of the session, we'll be doing our breakout sessions where we'll be trying to get each of you to talk to each other about your own career paths and hopefully learning a little bit along the way as well. So that is everything from me. I will now hand it over to Nahal, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the session.
Thank you so much, James. Welcome, everybody. As James said, my name is Nihal Munir. I'm the incoming chair for YMEC. And recently, we just revamped our whole ATCE program to include both students and young professionals in different sessions. So the aim, as Jim said, from today's session is to look into different careers as a petroleum engineer differently. You're not just meant to be sitting in front of some sort of a software doing field development plan, right? So what are the different careers that are out there? And also, as James said, we have a great case study or a great person with us here today, Mark Rubin. He has been the SPE CEO for over 20 years now. Basically, all the success you've seen comes from the volunteers, but behind the scenes, the great work really comes from the CEO and the staff here. I mean, James is a great example of that. Everyone knows James, right? So yeah, with that, I want to start by introducing the Mark Rubin career path. So Mark started as a technical engineer within Union Oil Company in California, and then he moved to API and worked there for 13 years. And then we had the pleasure of having him as SPE CEO. So Mark, let's start with the really easy question here. Why did you choose petroleum engineering as a major?
Thank you, Nihal, for having me. And I don't know about others, but when I was 18 years old and trying to decide on a major in college, I wasn't real firm on what I wanted to do. I knew I probably wanted to be in engineering, but I wasn't sure what type of engineer. But I actually grew up in a small city in East Texas, Tyler, Texas, where a lot of people were in the oil and gas industry. And I had friends who had decided to, or a friend who had decided to major in petroleum engineering. He kind of tried to talk me into it, and I looked around. What I realized was that in the community where I grew up, most of the successful people in our town were in the oil and gas industry. And I wanted to be an engineer. I thought that the oil and gas industry was a great place to be, so it just made sense. And I have never in the past 40 plus years of my career regretted that decision. It was clearly the right decision.
Great. So let's kind of segue from that and look into your career path. So you started as a technical engineer. Can you describe this, experience for me?
Sure. Being a young engineer, I was a young engineer in a relatively mature field. I did a little bit of drilling, a little bit of reservoir, but mainly production engineering. And one of the things that I thought was really great about that job, especially, it was a mature field. And so there are a lot of opportunities to get a lot of responsibility at a very young age. And so that was one of the things that I just thought was incredible about working in this industry. I enjoyed working as a production engineer. I got to, analyze problems, make proposals, and then go implement them and see how they turned out. It was a great learning experience for me. It was a learning experience about the industry and about petroleum engineering and about how to get things done.
Perfect. And then you got this job offer from API, right?
Yeah, and I didn't just get a job offer. I mean, I actually was in an interesting situation. Our industry has its ups and downs. And in the late 80s, we were in a downturn, and I found myself unemployed and had to go out and get a job. And there weren't a lot of jobs for petroleum engineers at that time. As I looked around, I actually did find a small independent producer that I worked for a few months. But then this job with API became available. And at the beginning of that role, I was focused on technical standards. And so I actually, at the time, I figured, well, I'll work on technical standards for a couple of years, and then maybe I'll go back to do production or drilling engineering or something like that. But I really enjoyed the organization I was working for, and I enjoyed the people I was working with. And I ended up spending a very long time there.
So as we were discussing before the session started, you really worked with the government. You worked on policies and strategies. So how was that move for you, like from a technical to like a whole new field that has like, I wouldn't say no engineering, but like a hint of engineering, and you have to support that, like your decision will be built basically or mainly on policies and supported by engineering. So engineering is not actually the main focus. So how was that experience for you?
It was interesting. I learned a lot, obviously. I started out on the technical side at the American Petroleum Institute, API, and then they moved me into government relations. And I spent 8 years in Washington, D.C. doing government relations. And what I would say is that every phase of my career, I may have had to do very different things and learn new things, but I always used the past work that I had done as the foundation for the new things that I did. I was in a unique position. There weren't, the petroleum industry has a lot of people doing government relations in Washington, D.C., where I was, but not that many who actually had worked in the oil field, who had worked as an engineer. And so, I built on that foundation. I used that as my advantage in that kind of work. I was more knowledgeable than a lot of the people who were doing government relations. And I was certainly more knowledgeable than the people in government who I was trying to work with, to explain the industry to, and to get things done.
Yes, definitely. I really agree. Like when we look even at United Nations, when we see people with engineering background and really discussing CCUS, you would know this person is actually an engineer or not. So I totally agree with you. So yeah, moving from API and the DC job to SPE, you said that every job you did kind of built a foundation for the next job. So what were like the starting, competencies that you start with as SPE CEO? And did you start as SPE CEO or you started in another thing? Yeah.
Yeah, I did start as the CEO. I was recruited from API to come back to Texas, where I was originally from, and take the SPE CEO's job. And I was recruited by a search consultant. But, without, if I had just gone from being an engineer into this type of role in SPE, I never would have been able to do it. But I had 13 years of experience working in an association, most of that time in Washington. And I got to understand how associations work and how you're effective in leading any association, which is very, very different than being an engineer. And so, in an association, for SPE, we have a lot of volunteers. At API, the people who I work with on committees for API were all people representing their companies and their company's interests. So it was a little bit different, but it was a lot of the same skills. It was bringing together groups of people to build a consensus around ideas, around positions, around what you wanted to accomplish. And that applies to any association out there. And so again, coming to SPE, I built on that foundation. I also built on some of the relationships that I had developed. When I came to SPE, one of my roles is to work with the International Board of Directors. And there were a few people on the SPE board who I had worked with in my years of API. And so I already had some of those relationships, and I had the skills that I had developed working with groups of people, with bodies of committees, that kind of thing, to build consensus. And then again, I built on that again at SPE.
Yeah. So the industry is really volatile. It goes through ups and downs all the time, right? And you've basically lived through a couple or more of these, right? As SPE CEO, how did you keep SPE afloat and competitive through these times? I know you had to lay off staff. I know you had to make like drastic measures to keep SPE on the right track. So what were these strategies, and yeah, how did you navigate your way through that?
One of the things that you always know in this industry is that we're cyclical. When things are really good, it's not going to be good forever. And when things are really bad, it's not going to be bad forever. And so, in a couple of periods of time when we went through downturns in the industry, I knew things would get better, and I just wanted to help us bridge the gap until things got better. And yet, unfortunately, that meant downsizing SPE during the last downturn. But we understood what we needed to do. We understood what the industry needed from us. And I think we were able to do that effectively. But knowing that no downturn is forever, as well as no upcycle is forever either, is important. That said, I'll add to that in saying that the current downturn is more challenging because it's not like any downturn we've ever faced. SPE is affected not just by oil prices, but we're affected by, how the companies react to those oil prices. And frankly, oil prices are coming back up, but the reaction to the pandemic is still going on. As most of you know, a lot of what we do are basically bringing people together in meetings and technical conferences and local section meetings. And in times like this, when it's harder to get people together, it's harder to operate SPE. Again, in this case, we're doing things virtually. We've done everything just about virtually for the past year and a half. And that's an interesting challenge to move SPE through. It's one that I'd never faced, or frankly, never even thought about facing. But we know things will come back. We just don't know how quickly. So that's, I'm optimistic for the future, but we're dealing with a lot of challenges at the present.
Yeah, 100%. Aside from the pandemic, also the move to carbon neutrality and the lot of downsizing in the fossil fuel production and all these things. So how do you intend to lead SPE through the energy transition?
I think that the most important role for SPE is to help our members navigate the energy transition. The transition is happening at a different pace in different parts of the world, but it's going to affect everybody. And one of the things that I learned in my career, because I'm certainly not doing petroleum engineering, not directly, but one of the things I learned in my career is that sometimes opportunities are in places you don't necessarily expect them. And what I think we need to do for our membership is to help our members recognize those opportunities and take advantage of those opportunities. Some of us have had to make pivots in our career to do things that we didn't expect. If you'd have asked me when I graduated with a petroleum engineering degree, if I ever thought I'd be the CEO of SPE, I would have kind of laughed at you. I mean, I've been a member of SPE since 1979, but I didn't understand anything about how associations work, about the staff of SPE. When it comes to the energy transition, there are going to be roles in related industries where petroleum engineering skills are necessary, they're needed. I mean, there are opportunities like CCUS, where petroleum engineers are going to have opportunities. And so we need to share information about those new industries that are being developed with our members. We're building content on the energy transition into things like our SPE live events and our conferences. And that's our role, is to help educate folks and help kind of expose people to those opportunities that are out there.
100%, I do agree. Like the CCUS in particular, you need understanding of the subsurface to be able to do that. And this is basically the job of petroleum engineers.
Yep.
Yeah. So you are actually managing volunteers and employees, right? Doing the hard equation. What are the main differences from your opinion, and how do you navigate through that?
Well, the staff who work for me, they listen. And the members do too, right? That's meant to be fun. But it is very different, because when you're working with staff, you have to lead them, of course, and you want them to support the things that SPE is doing. You want to get their support. But it's more challenging when it comes to working with committees and volunteers a little bit. Because you have to build consensus, and I think probably the most important skill in either managing volunteers or managing staff is really being able to listen and hear what people are saying and understand what's behind what they're saying, so that you can help move people to a consensus about what you need to do.
So, as SPE president, what is the most important input you could think of? Like, is it the input from having lots of volunteers, or like the help from the companies, or the technical content we're putting out there? What is like the most important thing we're doing as SPE, and what is your contribution to it?
You know, the input is from everyone. And a lot of what I do is to try to gather input from multiple sources, whether it's from company officials, from member volunteers, from the board of directors, from the staff, and try and gain, again, I mentioned, gain consensus on the things that SPE should do. That's my role. I manage a lot of people. I work with a lot of volunteers, but it's you have to listen to what the input from everybody, and try and make sure that all parties, all sides understand what the others are looking for, and help move the organization towards consensus.
Right. So I have another question. It's about basically just going through your career from the time you entered the university as an undergrad petroleum engineer until the SPE CEO. What are the essentials in each part of your career, like the essential skills?
Okay. Well, working as an engineer, I mean, obviously I relied on
Mark, we cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Hello? Okay. Well, working as an engineer, obviously I relied on my education a great deal. But also, as anybody who's worked in our industry knows, the education only gets you so far, and you've got to build up a depth of experience. That means, sometimes learning from your own mistakes, as well as hopefully learning from the mistakes of others. It means continuous learning. It means you never stop learning just because you're out of school. One of the things that I relied on as a working engineer were SPE papers, and that was back in the days before the internet. And I had to call up the company librarian and ask her to send me physical papers in the mail about a particular topic so I could learn about it. And then moving into government relations was really very different. I didn't have the technical part of it was pretty straightforward and simple, but what I relied on was my ability to explain our industry to people who didn't understand it, and in some cases, regulators who didn't really like our industry. And so that was a different skill set, but I still relied on my reservoir of technical knowledge, but really I had to learn a different skill set. And then, of course, coming to SPE, that was really my first time to work in a global organization. And so one of the most interesting things to me about this role is what I've learned about how to deal with different cultures around the world, and how to bridge the gap between the thinking of members, board members, and volunteers from one part of the world with the thinking of members in another part of the world. And, we try to be consistent in many of the things we do globally, but we also have to adapt to different approaches to doing business in other parts of the world. So that's a little bit about that.
Yeah. So that's really interesting. So if you would look back to your career, would you change anything?
The only I wouldn't change anything about my career. I've enjoyed it. It's been fascinating to me. I've learned something new in every aspect of my career. To be frank, the only change that I would make is that I would tell my younger self to have more patience, especially with the people that I managed. That's really about it. That's the only thing I would change, because I've loved my career. I've gotten to do some amazingly interesting things throughout my career, things that I never would have thought that I would have done, graduating with a petroleum engineering degree. But because I was open to doing different things and to new opportunities, those opportunities came my way.
Yeah, that's a very important message, just to be open to other possibilities. So I saw that you have an MBA as well, right? So how did you came into this, decision of having an MBA, and how did this affect your way of thinking and the way you deal with things?
Well, I actually, in the late 1980s, when I was having difficulty finding a job as a petroleum engineer, I thought, well, I should go back to school and get my MBA, and maybe that'll open up some other opportunities. And so I was going to go back to MBA school full time, but before I started the semester, API offered me a job. And I said, I'm going to take this job and I'm going to continue to get my MBA, but on a part-time basis. And for me, as somebody who since that time has been in managerial roles and in non-technical roles, it's really been invaluable. I've relied on what I learned in getting my MBA throughout most of my time at API, and especially during my time at SPE. But at the time, it was really because opportunities were a little bit limited for petroleum engineers, and I was trying to figure out what I could do with the next phase of my career, and it seemed like something that made sense to me personally based on my interest, and something that I thought I could build into new opportunities.
Great. So finally, I would like to ask you if you have any advice for the students and young professionals on how to choose different career paths and how to stay open, and how really to navigate through these difficult times, pandemic and transition and all.
Just a few points. One, never stop learning, because no matter what career path you have, continuing to learn is absolutely critical. And then again, of course, be open to opportunities, be looking out for those unique opportunities. And finally, this one is, it's sometimes hard to convince people of this, but be optimistic and have faith that your career will work out. It may not work out exactly like you thought it was going to work out, but if you have faith and you continue learning and you're optimistic and you're seeking out those interesting opportunities, you'll do okay.
Great, thank you so much for this message. And now we can open the Q&A for our audience.
Certainly, we have a comment from Matt Swartler at SPTU Klausthal, Germany. I don't know if he's oh, looks like he is happy to go on camera. So Mats, do you want to join us, and you can ask your question direct to Mark?
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
loud and clear.
Great, great. Yeah, I'm a bit unsure as my internet connection here is very unstable because I'm currently in Moscow for an exchange semester. But yeah, my questions are, first of all, thank you very much. It's a very interesting story you have there. And the question from my side is, as like, especially in Europe, more and more international oil companies or the major companies, they are investing a huge amount of money into renewables, hydrogen, CCS, and so on. So do you see that this will be like becoming maybe even the main part of their business, or will like oil and gas stay in the focus? And if you or we as students should be trying to adapt to this and try to get as much knowledge in these fields, especially maybe hydrogen and CCS, as possible to get like a smoother transition into the industry and maybe also to stay there for our lifetime?
Yeah, there's a lot packed into that question.
Sorry.
One of the things that's most interesting to me about the energy transition is that this is the first, I've been in this career since my first real job as a fully fledged engineer in 1982. This is the first time I've ever seen so many different strategies by different oil and gas companies around the world. I mean, typically, everybody moves in packs, but a lot of different companies, for a lot of different reasons, have developed different strategies because of the energy transition. That said, our industry is going to be around for a very long time. We are going to, the companies that are on the cutting edge of making investments outside of the oil and gas industry, the oil companies who are branching out, even those companies still have an enormous reserves that they're going to be producing over many years. They're still going to need petroleum engineers and geologists to work on those projects. But they are going to be doing other things. Some of those things are going to be very kind of foreign to the oil industry, things like solar and wind, for the most part, except for the offshore wind, which relies on the same civil engineering principles that support our offshore platforms. But others are going to be investing heavily in CCUS. And of course, a petroleum engineering background can be really useful for CCUS projects. So I would say that anybody who wants to work in our industry as a real petroleum engineer doing petroleum engineering kind of work throughout their career, there are going to be those kinds of opportunities, but there are going to be new opportunities that present themselves. And I think everybody has to kind of think for themselves what role they are most interested in, and look for the opportunities to do that. I mean, I think this would be a great time, for example, to specialize in CCUS. It's only going to grow over time. There are other opportunities out there. If we go to more energy from hydrogen, there are going to be opportunities there. So there's not one path. There are a lot of paths out there, and they're driven both by your interest and by the opportunities that present themselves to you. But the one thing I'm clear on is that there are going to be opportunities for petroleum engineers for many years to come.
Yeah, this is good to hear that. I also assume hydrogen and CCS, it's maybe petroleum engineering is already like the closest field to this, as there are no other engineers that have like this subsurface understanding. So I'm happy to hear that and can totally agree. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you so much. To add to Mark's point, if you look at the integrated assessment models, which basically the models that looks into the technical pathways or the technological pathways to net zero, you will find that 50% plus of the energy mix is actually fossil fuel by 2050. So yeah. So Mark, I have a question actually. What is actually the role of SRMS or during this kind of energy transition? I know like this document was out there in 2017 talking about the different classification, and it's a great work that I actually used in my thesis. So how do you see this group going forward?
Yeah, the work of SRMS, kind of builds on.
Mark, again, we cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Well, the work of SRMS really builds on our petroleum resources management system that's been around and we've supported for many years. And it's a perfect example of how our knowledge as petroleum engineers can be applied to new problems. And it's one of the things that we want to do as SPE is to focus on those areas. They may be new to us. They may be different than what we've done historically, but they really do benefit from the knowledge of petroleum engineers that we've developed over many, many decades. I see SPE, I don't know exactly what opportunities are going to be out there for SPE to get more involved in CCUS and those types of projects. But I see us as being very open to finding those areas where our knowledge is useful to solve some of these new, unique problems.
Yes, 100%. As like the main actually driver for CCUS is EUR. So yeah, I totally copy that. So any other questions?
It's not really a question. I've got some comments that have come through on the YouTube feed. I wanted to say Mark is such a great leader to work with, and this session has been really great. It's always good to attend Mark's speech and meetings. So I wanted to share that with you, Mark. But a question for me: what's your highlight of working as SPE CEO? What's your favorite parts of that job?
My favorite part is working with the member volunteers. Now, don't get me wrong, I love working with the staff chains, but it really, and we were talking about this in the board meeting today. It is amazing to me how much energy and devotion our active volunteers put into SPE. They're very passionate about the organization, and SPE would not be successful without all of the incredible work that volunteers do. It's really clear. And so, working with so many great people, wonderful people who volunteer their time to support SPE, and they do it because they get personal satisfaction from doing it, but also because it's helping others. And to me, that's the thing I enjoy most.
Awesome. I see the same thing. Just working with members every day is incredible. Just the dedication is just absolutely incredible. It really is. I think. Oh, we've got one more question from Deborah. Should we see, Deborah? Would you like to come on camera? This is a short notice for you. Do you want to? If not,
well,
I can ask
I'm
you.
in my office, so
Go for it then, quickly.
yeah, sure. I'm Deborah, and I'm from A&M. Yeah, this is just a curious question. This is not an attacking question or anything. But I know that because we are going to be decreasing our oil, well, not really decreasing, transitioning into like renewables basically with the aim of like net zero. But do we see in the future that we will consolidate more with other societies into like a more like renewable energy society? Because given now like there's kind of like the talk between AAPG and SPE merging, right? Is that going to be happening also in the future? So that's my question.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and it's actually one that I get fairly frequently. I don't know what the future really holds. I can sort of, my crystal ball only goes out a year or two or three. But one of the things, when we talk about things like CCUS and hydrogen and geothermal, those are really areas where, petroleum industry technical knowledge brings, adds value. Even things like offshore wind, where while it may not be the petroleum engineers, it's the civil engineers, but the knowledge developed in our industry adds value. It's more difficult for me to see that connection to things like solar, but maybe at some point that will be there. Certainly there are opportunities to use solar in our field operations. And yeah, there's, there are more opportunities for that. But we are going to partner with other organizations when it comes to addressing the energy transition overall. But it's been mentioned before. But even if we don't get off into the solar industry or hydro or things like that, the thing that I have confidence in is that even as this energy transition unfolds, oil and natural gas are going to be incredibly important. We're going to have to find ways to reduce our carbon emissions. We're going to have to focus on things like carbon capture, utilization, and storage. We're going to end up probably over the course of the next 10 to 20 years, focusing more on natural gas than on oil in some respects, because of course, when we use natural gas to produce electricity, it provides about half the carbon emissions as coal. And that's going to be something that's critical. But no economy, no country can rely on just one energy source. There's a lot of work on things like battery storage, but I mean, it's going to be the infrastructure necessary for us to fully rely on renewables globally. I mean, the amount of infrastructure that would be needed to do that is just incredible. And so it's clear to me that we're going to have to continue to rely on oil and natural gas. We're going to have to focus on and make carbon capture, utilization, and storage economically viable in more cases than it is now in the future. And there's a lot of work to do. And there's a lot of work for engineers to do. And I'm optimistic about that.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mark. And thank you to Deborah as well. And good luck tomorrow with the student paper contests. It should be good. So exciting, good work. Now, I think were there any final questions from you?
No, also that was really great talk. Thank you so much, Mark. It was really inspiring, and the range of expertise you have is like really mind-blowing, and you're really the best example to present out there of a great leader with SPE who made, when you were talking about volunteers, they're doing great things. This is because you and your team made that possible for them. I'm one of these volunteers, and I really got a lot of things out of my experience in SPE. Like I got scholarship because of my leadership in SPE. I got into great programs with the Department of Energy and Department of State in the US because of my work with SPE. So thank you for making this happen, not just for me, but with the other 800,000 members. Thank you for leadership, Mark, and thank you for coming today.
You're welcome. Thank you. I enjoyed our talk today. I wish everybody the best of luck, and hope that those of you who are able to attend ATCE truly take care.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mark. So now we're going to be moving on to something slightly different. we're going to do the meet and greet part of our student meet and greet today. So I know some people have been a bit shy moving on to cameras and things like that, but hopefully by working into smaller groups, we want to get each of you talking to each other about some of the things that we've been talking to Mark about today. So, you know, your concerns about the energy transition, the role SP will play in it, the role that you're going to play in it. You guys are all the future engineers that will be implementing a lot of these changes that we've all been talking about, and developing that infrastructure that Mark's been talking about as well. So Yun, if you're ready, it would be fantastic to just spend about or so, maybe 20 minutes with you in breakout sessions. We'll try and keep it to kind of groups of like 2 or 3, so you guys have ample opportunity to chat with each other and get to know each other. Don't forget, like, SP is a big networking opportunity. There aren't very many platforms that you can use to talk to people from all over the world with the same interest as you, at the same level as you are, and the people that you talk to, you'll probably keep meeting at ATCs every year. As Mark can attest, and even Nahal now as well, the more times you attend ATC, you get to see some familiar faces, and it's always great to meet some new people. So thank you once again, Mark. You're welcome to stay on if you wish, but you know, if you want a more intensive interview, then you're welcome to stay on as well. But I know you're incredibly busy.
Thank you. I do need to take off, but I enjoy it.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Mark.
Thomas.
Yes, so right now to the breakout session. So yes, Ian, if you could allocate us, try and get us into groups of maybe like 3, something like that, and then we'll all get to join each other in a few minutes' time. Hey there, who do we have in the group? Who's joining us?
Hey, James, I think these members in the main room haven't joined a room yet.
Okay, it looks like we've got 2 unassigned participants. Have you done this manually?
Yes, and I'll make sure that I've joined them with a YMET professional or a professional member.
Fantastic, well done. Okay. Let them enjoy their time. upstairs. In the patio, outside. I'll see if I can have a look from outside. I'm just about to rejoin another meeting. I might have eaten some poison and then just make sure you keep the dogs away. Okay, looks like we're getting some of you back now. Awesome, awesome. Looks like we're all coming back. Everyone's very quick to switch the cameras back off again. You can keep them on, it's okay. Just give it another minute or so till we got everyone back. Okay. Looks like we have everyone. Nihal, how was your group?
Yeah, it was good. We really talked a lot about energy transition and CCUS and yeah, how this falls into the whole system and how the oil and gas get assessed. I don't know if, yeah, I think Deborah's here. So I just wanted to say like this comment. There was this person in my cohort doing research about the wind energy, right? And how the wind is really unpredictable, the speed, right? So it doesn't really keep the network or like the grid stable. So you have to compensate with natural gas to kind of keep the grid stable. The idea is to connect these stations to natural gas wells. And the challenge is how quickly you can actually ramp up the production and how quickly you can ramp it down again. So yeah, I totally like, I think we said that many times today, but oil and gas is really here to stay as of now. Yeah.
There you go. I think you're right. It's really interesting to get everybody talking about this stuff because I'm sure lots of people spend time thinking about this on their own and maybe don't have the chance to talk about it openly to other people. I mean, like many people, I'm sure, have lots of friends within the industry, but particularly for students who may not know people kind of going through this at the moment. Especially as some departments are getting smaller and things like that, our network's getting smaller. Some people may not feel very comfortable talking about this kind of stuff generally. But you know, we're in a safe space here. ASP is a safe space to kind of talk. So it's really interesting to hear some of those initiatives, especially as you know, we have things coming up like the YP Congress with the Ideathon, and ideas like that would be, you know, incredible like solutions, because I think, you know, as more people roll off, and it's going to be down to the next generation to kind of work these things out, think outside the box, embrace all parts of the energy mix and things like that as well. So incredible stuff. So are there any other people within the groups who wanted to kind of share some of their findings or anything unusual or just interesting people that they met? Please just go ahead and raise your hand, and it would be great to hear from you.
I can just only say the same as Niall, as we were in the same team. And yeah, I mean, even funny how many coincidences you have and how small the world sometimes is. Is that we like talked about the same company and everything.
Definitely. And yeah, you're all in different places, but you've got these shared experiences together. I would say, you know, you can keep these conversations going. Like SP has lots of kind of, we have SP Connect and places like that where we have forums for discussions and stuff like this. But, you know, there's nothing quite like getting people to properly talk to each other. Even if it is online, it's really good to hear. Does anybody else have any comments or kind of interesting things that they found from their discussion? Just go ahead and raise your hand and we'll come to you.
Yeah, I think also we can safely say that we're doing a lot of things this season, this upcoming season, in relation to energy transition. We're doing this series called YMEX Speaks Gaia. Our very first session is going to be around February, and James, correct me if I'm wrong, it's going to be alongside the SBE Offshore Europe. So we will be tackling a lot of you know, subjects in relation to sustainability and energy transition. And if you're interested in these talks, please feel free to reach out to us and attend them. We will be doing different talks in different regions. So yeah, I think it's going to be great and enriching. We also have Rodrigo on the line.
Yeah, incoming chair, existing chair, sorry, Rodrigo. How you doing, Rodrigo?
Hi guys, how are you? Apologies, I couldn't join from the beginning. Had some work meetings at the same time, but congratulations.
You dropped off there.
You're muted again.
Rodrigo, you're muted.
Hello.
There we go.
Okay, I think I'm back now. So I just was going to mention, no, it's great seeing you, James, Niha, and Tom. I know I catched up the event already started, but I see it's an amazing session, ATCE, with great seeing all the students and fellow YMIC people joining. And it's been a pleasure, of course, and hugely honored to pass on the role to Niha. And like you guys mentioned, there's a lot of work still being done, yet to done, and that can be done. And YP Congress, I think it's going to be hopefully a major event, a new flagship event for the young members. You can, exchange ideas, craft on how to improve the society, make it better for our members, and hopefully, who knows, like you guys were asking before, discussing, if SP will become a general energy society. I myself, personal individual view, I hope so. I think it would be a great thing to happen in the future to SP to evolve into that, being already great. So it's absolutely amazing to join you guys. And if there's anything else I can help, you can count on me.
I know, Mohammed, you had your hand up, Al Sharaf.
Yes, yes.
Please
yes,
go ahead.
James. Yeah. Thank you, Nihal, for this great interview with Mark. It's very good insights. During the breakout rooms, I very, very got surprised about what the level of students have reached. Especially they have reached to know about the energy transition. What is the strategy of countries to go about the natural gas itself? So I get surprised about that. And they, I think, Mark and Fatima, and Deborah, which are in my breakout room, they asked about what challenges they can face during entering the industry, and they, I think, have the very, very good energy to join the industry itself with good preparation for what will face during the entering this industry. So I think it's a very, very beneficial network session during the student meet and greet. Thank you, James.
Great words. Yogesh, yes, please go ahead.
So sorry for joining a little late. It was nice hearing from Dharaj and Walter. So it was good to, as I am an undergraduate, I got a lot to learn from the masters and PhD students who had a lot of experience in their field. So it was nice they're talking about their research fields. I'm new to it, but I have got to learn a lot about from both Walter and Nihal. So it was, thank you, James, for joining me to the room 3, as they were a great member over there. Thank you, sir.
That's all right. Well, all these activities are here to kind of help you, and I don't think you'll find anyone who's not worth talking to. So I'm sure you would have had a good fun in all the other groups as well. But that's really, really great to hear. Would anybody else like to share their experiences in the group? Were there any particular themes that came up? Was it all the energy transition? Is that what everybody wanted to talk about?
And James, perhaps just helping and joining in that, I think we got in our session a couple of questions on if a master's degree is necessary, and then I pivot and take back to the group that question in terms of I imagine some students might be thinking, well, if I am to do a master, should I do it in drilling, reservoir, traditional petroleum engineering curricula, or focus more on energy transition? Right. And because I've seen some colleagues here in Brazil, Latin America, that they decide to do their masters in something completely unrelated to oil and gas. They go to offshore wind power or something. And then I think like Niha was mentioning, and very well said, oil and gas is here to stay for a while. So I think, as an advice is, whether if someone is pursuing some postgraduate degree on energy transition, I don't think that those that have or want to have a postgraduate degree on oil and gas should feel that they are doing the bad decision, or that it will be not useful at all. Because I think, you guys were discussing, it's an energy transition. The key word being transition. It's not, demand is still expected to rise and keep on rising for the next year. So perhaps just as a message to students, that things don't switch overnight, and the know-how and experience from petroleum engineers is still going to be needed for many years to come. So not be afraid of it.
Definitely. And that's something I think about a lot, because oil and gas isn't obviously just energy. There's a lot of other byproducts that kind of come with it. And, while we're finding lots of alternatives to energy. We're not finding alternatives to plastics, to medicines, to tarmac, to like all the other things that kind of come from that. But obviously the money comes from like 80% more gets used for energy in various different formats. So how will those other things be affected as well? If we all move to other forms of energy, will plastic still be viable as just a like, is it worth drilling just for things like that, or will we just purely recycle everything? Or there's lots of kind of knock-on effects that I think will be part of the conversation in a few years time as well, because I don't think we've had a couple of countries have big power cuts, even like places like Texas recently, but we haven't really had a situation where people have had to deal with unreliable energy as well. So there's lots of kind of things to think about. It's not always as straightforward as some people make it sound, but it's really amazing talking to you guys, because like, unlike me, I'm SP staffed. I don't have to worry too much, but you guys are the ones solving these problems. So it's really incredible to hear from you all.
I think I want to add to your point as well. And Rodrigo's, should you go for a master? Because I get this question a lot. Should I go for a master's in petroleum engineering or no? So I really can't say no, and I also cannot say yes because I don't know the future. But I think a happy metal is basically focusing on the skills you can acquire. Like if we're looking now at literally everything requires Python, for example, right? Do you know programming? So this is a skill set that you should acquire. It will come in handy. Something else, and I'm copying like Philip from earlier today, is focus on your competencies. What are the things that you can bring to the table? If you're a reservoir engineer, you will be able to talk about CCUS. You will be able to talk about storage, because at the end of the day, it's three-phase flow, right? You have your oil, you have your water, and you have your CO2. You will be able to talk about the, the displacement on a pore size. That's all reservoir engineering. As to add to my earlier point, the renewables kind of need a support from the fossil fuels to keep them stable as of now. So this is ramping the production up and down. This requires knowledge in production engineering. So yeah, these are the things that can feed into the energy transition. It's not 100% petroleum engineering, but again, it aids in the energy transition. So these are the skill sets you kind of need to look at. Something else in the CCUS is basically the geomechanics. This is very important right now because you're storing so much underground. You should be looking at, are you triggering some seismicity? Are you going to fracture the cap rock? What's going to happen? So geomechanics is also a very important aspect to look at. So yeah.
A lot to think about. I don't think any of these conversations are going away anytime soon. But
Yeah.
I mean, we're approaching towards the end of this time now, so I wanted to take a bit of time to just mention some of the other activities that we have, thankfully planned by many of the people here on this call from the Young Member Engagement Committee. Tomorrow we have our day of student paper contests. So we have our undergraduate, masters and PhD divisions, all of those again available via YouTube and also via the ATCE app. We're not letting people into the Zoom meetings for those, just to kind of keep the questions to the judges. But yeah, it's still freely available for everyone to watch as well. And then, as has been mentioned, we have a session on exploring, do you need an MBA to get ahead in your career? So that will be a really exciting session. We've got panel speakers from all corners of SPE, from DNI, business management, leadership, YMEC, all of it, all in one place, all talking together. And then we also have our young members reception, where we have a very special guest speaking on behalf of the, well, not on behalf of the UN, but like within talking about sustainability in the industry. So we have a very special speaker for that. So please do join us for that. We'll have more networking opportunities. Obviously within ATCE, there's lots of other technical programs going on, lots of other activities, lots of networking opportunities. So please do make the most of it while you can. I know for many people, doing things online has really opened this up, but you know, hopefully next year things will start taking place physically again as well. So please do make the most of these opportunities while you can. Rodrigo, Nahal, do you have any final words before we go?
We're just gonna make a little announcement, James, and of course, if Nihal allows to, for people to join the YP Congress in the upcoming weeks or few months. It's going to be a major event tailored and thinking about students. So it's going to be something quite useful, interesting. I think they'll find it to be a great event.
Definitely. Thank you, Rodrigo. And Nahal, any final words from you?
Just thank you all so much for attending, and thank you so much, James and Jan, for setting this up and helping. And I hope you all gain something from today's session. And please do reach out to us on our SB email. And if you have like any questions for us, just stay connected, and we would love to have you. Thank you.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much, everybody. I will let you go a few minutes early. I appreciate all of your time today, and thank you for logging in live. Thank you to all of our Zoom attendees, all of our YouTube attendees, and everybody watching today on the SP ATCE app. It will all be available on demand straight away afterwards. So if you did miss anything, hopefully you can catch it soon as well. But thank you very much, everybody. It's been a very enjoyable day, and I hope you have a very Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Nika. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.